Welcome to our second video in a series Simplifying Act 20. I'm Jill Puhlmann-Becker, the Reading Specialist for the Ripon Area School District. Thank you for joining me for Simplifying Act 20. While there are talking points on each screen of this slideshow, I will not necessarily be reading them all word for word, so feel free to pause and read them as you wish. Act 20 requires that all students in kindergarten through grade 3 are screened. 4-year-old kindergarten students are also screened, but only twice a year in the fall and the spring to see that they are growing in their early literacy skills. Kindergarten, first, second, and third grade students are screened 3 times a year in the fall, the winter, and the spring. Screening assessments are short, quick measures given to see if there is an indication that there could possibly be a problem for a student learning to read. Think about them as you might going to the doctor and you get a blood pressure check every time you go. It's a quick check done often to see if there could possibly be any problems that need further investigation. So what is the screener that we're using with the students? This tool we're required to use is called AimsWeb Plus. Kindergartners are screened by the assessments in initial sounds, letter naming fluency, letter word sound fluency, and auditory vocabulary. First graders are screened using letter word sound fluency only in the beginning of the year, and then auditory vocabulary and oral reading fluency all through the year. Second and third graders are screened using assessments in vocabulary, which they take on the computer, and oral reading fluency. So what screening assessments does your child need to take? The screener assessments are quick checks, only about a minute long. Vocabulary is untimed for all of the grades. Kindergarten and first grade students, when they do their vocabulary, they're asked to point to a picture when they're given a prompt by a teacher. Initial sound requires that students say the sound of a word when they're presented with a picture. And letter naming fluency requires students to read as many letters as they can in a minute. The letter word sound fluency asks students to say the sounds of letters and some simple words. For first through third grade students, they are taking an oral reading fluency, which asks them to read from a story-like passage as many words as they can in a minute. And the second and third grade students' vocabulary, as I said, is taken on the computer, and they don't have any timing for that. So a little bit more about the screeners. Learning to read is a difficult thing. Our brains are hardwired for spoken language, but not for printed language. So screener scores help to identify students that might have a difficulty in learning to read that printed language. AimsWeb Plus has determined cut scores for each of the assessments that students take. A cut score is the lowest score at which a student can pass or be proficient on that particular screener. If a student scores below that cut score, they are considered at risk, or we call them flagged on the assessment. At risk does not mean that they will have a reading problem. It only means that there could be a problem and that more investigation is required to find out what is happening with that student. Again, if you think about the example of the doctor and the blood pressure, if your blood pressure numbers are high, the doctor might start to investigate further to find out what might be causing that. Many students have struggles in learning how to read. So how are those screeners scored? There are cut scores set for each assessment, and they change throughout the year as students should be progressing in their learning. In kindergarten, there's a composite score, which is determined by the total of 2 scores that are put together on the screener. In first through third grade, it is the oral reading fluency score from that screener that needs to be above that cut score of the 25th percentile. So these scores are measured in percentile. What is a percentile? A percentile is a way to rank scores from 0 to 99 to determine how well a student has performed. For example, if a student is said to be at the 90th percentile, that means only 10%, 9% of the scores, 10% of the scores were higher than where that student scored, and 89% of the scores were lower. Percentiles help us analyze where students might be compared to national norms. And as I said earlier, the Ames Web assessments are set at the 25th percentile for that cut score. So what if my child is below the cut score? If your child scores below the cut score, the 25th percentile, then additional assessments are administered, and a personalized reading plan will be written to set goals and address any support that your child might need. That was a lot of information. The quick summary is different screening measures are used depending on the grade level and the time of year. Students that score below the 25th percentile and the key screener will have a personalized reading plan developed for them. To learn more about those diagnostics, please tune in to our next video, and we will see you there. If you have further questions, as always, you can check the Wisconsin DPI FAQ page or contact me or Tammy Fox at Barlow Park Elementary. Thanks.